Hey guys, Hidden Truths here. Welcome to this new video with a bunch of new stories. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers and I think we can do it with your help. So please subscribe. It would honestly mean a lot to me. Now, let's get right into the stories.
The sky turned blacker than ink just as I reached the edge of the half-moon peninsula. The kind of storm you don't forecast, just feel. It had teeth. I'd only just taken the keys to the cottage, chipped blue paint, roof patched with tar, when the wind flung open the screen door behind me. It moaned like something ancient. I hadn't unpacked. My manuscript stayed zipped inside my duffel, festering. They said this coast had a rhythm of its own. Tides like tempers. I wanted that. Needed it, really. 41, burned out, and writing a novel I no longer believed in. I was supposed to finish it here, sell it on name alone, cash the advance and disappear for good. But that first night, I went walking instead. The cliff path near the water had no railing, just slick lichen and the howl of the wind. The kind of place that didn't care if you vanished. Maybe that's why I slipped. Maybe I wanted to. My foot caught on a root, my balance spun out, and suddenly I was airborne. A blur of sky, stone, then water. Cold water. Shocked lungs. Kelp wrapping my arms like a question I couldn't answer. I think I yelled. Not a word, just noise. And that's when she found me. She stood above the inlet in a red windbreaker, rope in hand, face dripping with salt and rain. Her dark hair plastered to her cheek. She looked like someone dropped out of a storm and onto the world. No hesitation. Just the rope, flung clean and fast. Wrap your arm, good, just like that. I don't remember the climb. Only the throb in my palms, the sting in my shoulder, and the laughter in hers. Bright and reckless. You were lucky. Or dumb. Or both, she said, brushing wet sand off my sleeve. Come up to the lighthouse. We keep a fire going. I followed her, dripping and half-frozen, up a path carved by salt and thyme. I only learned her name when we reached the top. Isla Marin, she said, fishing a spiral-bound book from her pack and handing me a pen. You're supposed to write why you came. I looked at the book. It wasn't a visitor log. Not exactly. Each page held messages, letters, really. Anonymous. Dated and signed with initials or nothing at all. Some poetic, others desperate. All of them human. Tidal Letters, the cover read. I'm not a tourist, I said. That doesn't disqualify you. I didn't write. She waited, smiling, then shrugged and tossed the pen back into the pack. Low tide reveals what high water hid, she said, quoting the page she'd left open. Think about it. Then she turned, descended a spiral stair, and left me standing in a room full of brass lenses, coiled rope, and the faint echo of her voice. My cottage faced the inlet. The waves slammed the rocks with a kind of rhythm that sounded like thought. I stared at my laptop for hours, fingers on the keys, but nothing came. Or rather, it came, and I hated it. The book I'd been commissioned to write, the one about a grieving brother hunting his twin's killer through Appalachian noir, felt like someone else's voice, mangled through mine. Marketable grief. Digestible despair. I couldn't bring myself to finish a sentence. I spent most of the next day pacing. Reading the faded newspaper clippings pinned to the pantry door. One described a shipwreck from 1981. Another quoted a poem about ghost tides. But it was the ledger that haunted me. I'd taken a photo of that phrase with my phone. Low tide reveals what high water hid. Somewhere in my chest, it tugged. That night, I took my coffee to the porch. A storm had blown itself out by dusk, leaving only mist and silence. I rocked back and forth in a wicker chair that squeaked with each sway. The sea had pulled back, revealing seaweed-roped stones and tidipools glinting with starlight. That's when I saw it, something wedged under the back step. I crouched. My shoulder still ached from the fall. I scraped back sand and gravel until my hand hit glass. A bottle. Dark green, crusted with salt and barnacle. Its cork was brittle but intact. Inside, a coil of paper waited. I pried the bottle open and shook it free. The paper unfurled with a whisper. I recognized the sentence instantly. It was mine. I wrote it on a ferry in 2003, sailing between islands off the coast of Washington, alone and drunk on heartbreak. I'd scrawled it on a napkin, sealed it in a wine bottle, and hurled it into the dark like some half-baked ritual. I never told anyone. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe I just wanted to see if something I wrote could survive salt and silence. But there it was. The exact line, smudged and sun-faded, in my own crooked hand. If I don't become someone else by dawn, I won't be here at all. How had it returned? Who found it? I turned the bottle over, but there was no note, no date, no mark at all. Only me. 13 years ago. And now, again. I didn't sleep. I watched the waves rise, then fall. And I wondered. What else might wash up? The next morning I walked to the lighthouse. Not for Isla. Not even for answers. I told myself I was just curious. That's how the best lies start, with a grain of something soft enough to pass for truth. I found her in the lamp room, polishing a brass burner with a cloth that had clearly seen decades. She didn't greet me, just pointed to a second cloth, folded on the sill. "You want to sit in here, you polish something," she said, and I obeyed. Not because I was shy. I've been interviewed, flattered, accused, I know how to hold court. But Isla had a kind of gravity that rewrote social instinct. You didn't perform around her. You stilled. She passed me an oil can, the kind I'd only seen in turn-of-the-century novels, and nodded toward a housing ring on a lantern plate. "That one's from the wreck of the Clara Vane. Salvaged in '86. The rest came from decommissioned towers along the west coast." "What about the letters?" I asked. "Those weren't salvaged. Those were started." She motioned toward the spiral-bound book resting under the window. First page dates to 2004. "It's how I got the grant to keep this place open." I hadn't asked, but I didn't stop her. She spoke like someone giving directions to a ghost, not cold, but careful. People write things when no one's watching. Sad things, good things. Small truths they'd never tell their therapist. The deal is, you don't sign. You just leave what needs saying. The next person might answer, or not. Either way, you've given the tide something to carry. I studied her in profile, windburned cheeks, sea-wet hair curling at the neck. She was younger than I'd thought, and older in the way deep water is old. Still and watchful. What if the wrong person reads one? I asked. Isla just smiled. You think a wrong person would hike a mile uphill, open a ledger by hand, and leave a letter behind? That afternoon, she invited me into the archives. A concrete room beneath the lens tower, where sea charts, logbooks, and a display case of salt-curled notes lived under soft blue light. Inside the glass were bottles. Hundreds of them. They're mostly empty now, Isla said, but some still hold their messages. Pre-Tidal Letter era. Before we built shelves and binders. Some came in with barnacles. Others with wedding rings. One had the tag from a stuffed bear. She let me hold one. The paper inside was warped and brittle, written in looping French script. A date, 1972, was penciled on the corner. I asked her who replied. Sometimes no one, she said. Sometimes me. That night, I stayed long after the sun went down. She invited me to the water for what she called a night swim for the archives. We didn't swim, not really. She did. I stood on the rocks and listened as she narrated the names of tide currents like they were old friends. Her voice wrapped around the darkness. She said them softly, reverently, like scripture. Capella surge, quarter moon swale, reversal gyre. I never knew tide could be so many things at once. Back at the cottage, I tried again to write. Not the commissioned novel, I'd stopped pretending I could finish it. Something else was moving through me, but I hadn't yet found the shape. So I reread the ledger. A new entry had been added. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was familiar. Too familiar. It mimicked the cadence of a book I'd left behind. One I buried in 2011 because it cut too close to who I was, not what the market wanted. The rhythm, the commas, it was mine. But I hadn't written it. Not this time. The line at the top read. What if the tide never takes it? What if it just keeps bringing it back? I ran my fingers over the page. Ink still fresh. As if the voice I'd tried to drown had floated back, taken a pen, and whispered through someone else. I left the lighthouse without closing the book. 2 nights later, another bottle arrived. I found it in the drift below my porch, lodged in the hollow between 2 tide-worn rocks. This one wasn't barnacled. The glass was smooth, new. Inside was a letter, not curled like mine, but folded into a triangle, sealed with red wax. I pried it open. Same handwriting. Same date as my 2003 bottle. But not mine. A reply. It read. I read your line in the dark. I answered in daylight. If you still wake, let that be enough. If you're not yet someone else, try again. My heart stuttered. The date on the corner wasn't recent. It was from 2009. 6 years after I sent my message. Whoever wrote this hadn't just found it. They'd been waiting. I didn't sleep. I walked the cliff path, this time more carefully. I counted every step to the inlet where Isla had pulled me out. And I whispered into the wind. Who are you really? The ocean had no answer. But a tide-pool shimmered. And somewhere far off, a light blinked red in the mist, like it was listening. We fell into a rhythm. Not romance, not at first. Just the kind of companionship you don't notice forming until it's too deep to label. In the mornings, I wrote, or tried to. The words still fought me, but the fight was different now, quieter. I'd wake before dawn, sit at my desk facing the sea, and watch the light filter in over the tide. Isla would arrive with a thermos of bitter tea and a book of nautical etchings. We'd work in silence, her with her ledgers, me with whatever fragments survived the page. By mid-afternoon, we'd walk the cliffs together. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes not. Sometimes she'd graze my hand with hers as we passed narrow bends, the way someone might brush seaweed from your shoulder, almost accidentally. But I felt it. Every time. I told her I used to write love stories. The kind with jagged edges and too much longing. I said I gave them up when longing stopped being a metaphor. Isla just looked out at the surf and said, some people don't give up. They just change tides. We spent an evening restoring old Fresnel lenses in the watch room. Isla wrapped the fractured prisms in cloth and held them to the oil lamp one by one. Watching her work was like watching someone speak another language. Every movement had weight. Every silence, a shape. The next morning, she left a small parcel outside my door. Inside, a thumb drive wrapped in wax paper. On it, an audio recording of her describing the coastal tides in winter. Not science, poetry. She called it, a field guide for staying. One windless night, we sat in the dry cove below the lighthouse. The stars were clear for once, the moon a thin grin. She pointed out where the kelp line drew away from shore. When you see that shape in the black, she said, it means the sea's about to exhale. She turned to me then, closer than usual. Her voice softer. You didn't tell me why you really came, Thomas. The truth nearly broke the air. I told the world I plagiarized someone. My last book. It's not true. But I let them think it was. I was tired. My words were selling, but nothing real was inside them anymore. The scandal gave them meaning I couldn't give. And pity sells better than prose. I couldn't look at her. Not yet. She didn't flinch. You came to disappear. I nodded. Isla didn't offer comfort. Only proximity. She leaned until her shoulder pressed mine, just enough to say, "You're still here." That counts. Storm warnings came in the next morning. Gale force winds. The town sealed its windows. Boats dragged up on shore, tied in crossed lines like old stitches. Isla went into lockdown mode, hauling archival boxes from the storage crawlspace and securing the lighthouse doors. I helped where I could, but the place had its own choreography, one she knew by heart. She moved with speed and silence, her hair lashed by salt air. I watched her bolt the hatch to the basement archives like she'd done it 100 times. She had. "You get used to storms?" I asked. "No," she said, checking the seals again. "But you stop pretending they won't come." That night, rain lashed the windows like claws. The wind howled through the cracks in the shutters. I couldn't write. I couldn't sleep. So I wandered the house. The power flickered once, then failed altogether. I lit one of the antique lamps she'd given me from the archives. And that's when I found it. The attic door. Unlatched. Just barely. I climbed. The stairs were steep and narrow, and the air smelled of paper and salt. At the top, boxes. Dozens. Shoeboxes labeled in her neat, unfussy hand. Dates. Tides. Initials. I opened one. Inside, letters. Some typed. Most handwritten. All addressed the same way. To the boy on the ferry. My lungs seized. I read the first. You asked if the sea could make you someone new. I don't know. But sometimes I write answers to people I'll never meet, hoping one of them wakes up wanting to stay. Another, dated 2006. I think you meant it. That line about vanishing. I wish I could have caught you then. Said, wait. Just wait one more tide. I kept reading. Hands shaking. Heart loud. They weren't letters to a stranger. They were letters to me. Footsteps on the stair. I turned. She stood in the doorway, soaked from rain, windbreaker dripping. She didn't look angry. Or even surprised. You weren't supposed to find those, she said. I couldn't speak. I didn't know it was you, she said quietly. Not until last year. I saw your name in the news. Heard your voice in the scandal quotes. And I remembered the way your sentences sounded in the dark. She stepped inside, arms wrapped tight around herself. I never meant to answer just one person. But you were first. You started it. My throat closed. And I never stopped writing back. Lightning split the sky behind her. And then the lights went out. The storm swallowed everything. No power. No signal. Just the hammer of rain on the roof and wind against the glass like it wanted inside. I lit the lamp again, and Isla crossed the attic, her boots squelching softly on the old boards. I should have told you, she said. Her voice was a thread in a whirlwind. I didn't think you'd come here. I thought, if you ever knew, you'd leave. I looked around the attic. The boxes, the letters, my own name whispered in 100 variations. The boy on the ferry. The voice I tried to drown. But someone had been listening, even then. You found the bottle, I said, finally. In 2003. She nodded, arms folded across her chest, like she was bracing against something colder than wind. I was 17. Angry. Alone. I thought I'd missed something, that everyone else had the manual for being human and I didn't. I came here after school. Tried to hold my breath longer than the tide would let me. Her eyes flicked up to mine. Then I found your bottle. I felt the weight of it all, rain overhead, salt on my tongue, and years between us that suddenly made sense. I thought it was a poem, she said. That line, if I don't become someone else by dawn, I won't be here. It felt like a dare. Or a promise. I didn't know who wrote it. Just that someone else out there had a reason to vanish. So I answered. The letters, I said. She stepped toward the nearest box, ran her fingers over the lid. I started them before the ledger. Just for you. Left them in tidipools, under stones, stuck in hollow driftwood. Then when the Tidal Letters took off, I let the town write too. Anonymous stories. Hope disguised as confession. She shook her head, hair damp and curling at her neck. But I kept replying to the fairy boy. Just in case. In case you ever came back. I sat down on a battered trunk. My knees couldn't hold the weight. When my name hit the papers last year, I said, you recognized the sentence. I recognized the voice, she said. Not the scandal. Not the photo. Just how your words breathed. The storm broke something loose around midnight. A windowpane shattered in the archives room below. We bolted down the spiral stairs, the oil lamp flickering between us. Saltwater pooled across the stone floor, tugging at loose maps and the corner of a canvas box. We have to move them, Isla said. If the surge rises, these'll be gone. We knelt in water, hauling letterboxes and cases onto the upper steps. Some soaked through. Others sealed tight. One slipped from my grasp and burst open, pages floating, sentences dissolving like ghosts. I snatched one from the water before the ink vanished. It read. Dear stranger, if you're reading this, it means you stayed. Thank you for that. I looked at her. She didn't look back. Her focus was surgical. She had done this before. Saved what could be saved. When the last box was safe, we sat on the stairs, soaked through and silent. A wave pounded the wall outside like a fist remembering its shape. And still, neither of us moved. By morning, the storm had spent itself. The sky was wrung dry, pale and hollow. We drank scalding tea in the lighthouse's watch room, hands trembling from cold or adrenaline or maybe everything at once. She didn't speak until the sun crept high enough to touch the sill. You should put something in the ledger, she said. Not a question. Not a command. Just fact. I hesitated. For 20 years, I said slowly, I've written behind pen names, editors, agents. I built a whole persona because I didn't think anyone wanted the real voice. And when someone did, I buried it. She didn't flinch. You can dig it up. I stood, went to the spiral-bound book resting on its stand. The last page was blank. No pen name this time. Just, Thomas Avery. And below that, a sentence I hadn't planned but somehow already knew. You pulled me out of water twice. Once with rope. Once with story. I closed the book. The room didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt red. We walked the beach at low tide. The water had pulled back so far, even the oldest stones seemed surprised to see the air. I picked up a broken bottle neck with threads of sea glass inside. She plucked a cork from a drift of eelgrass and smiled. No letter? I asked. Maybe it's waiting for you, she said. We didn't talk about the future. Not yet. But as the sun pushed higher, I saw her slip one of the surviving letters back into the hollow of a rock pool. And when she looked up at me, she said the one thing that mattered. You don't have to go. I didn't answer. I just stayed. The sea still carried wreckage from the storm, but the light was new. Morning stretched itself slow and golden across the cove, and the air smelled like renewal, the kind that doesn't need a name. The lighthouse stood tall behind us, salt-washed but unbroken. Isla's boots left soft indentations in the wet sand beside mine. We didn't speak. We didn't have to. She had offered me presence, not permanence. The difference rang clear in my chest like a struck bell. At the base of the cliffs, we carried the rescued boxes, Tidal Letters, the shoeboxes from the attic, fragments of lives and almost lost names, into the sun to dry. We laid the pages out across flat driftwood and stone, anchoring them with bits of rusted iron and smooth shells. The wind didn't take a single one. "They'll be okay," she said, pressing a palm to the lid of the last box. She didn't mean the letters. Back at the cottage, I opened my laptop and deleted the manuscript. All of it. The polished, agent-ready novel with blurbs waiting from people I'd never had dinner with. Gone in a keystroke. It felt like stepping off a ledge, and not falling. I stared at the blank screen and waited. And then, quietly, the right words began to arrive. Not from me. Not entirely. They came the way surf does, sounding like breath. Not declarations, but openings. I wrote until my hands ached, not chasing plot, just listening. To the waves. To her footsteps outside. To the current of something older than both of us. By sunset, I had the first chapter of something I hadn't known I was waiting to write. Not fiction. Not memoir. Something stranger and braver, a story in tide form. A ledger of voices. I named it Tidal Letters. Isla came to the door that evening with 2 mugs of broth and a question in her eyes. She saw the screen. She read the title. She didn't ask what I'd scrapped. Only what I was building. I told her, not mine. Ours. The town's. The strangers. A living, breathing collection of notes between people who might never meet, but needed each other anyway. No royalties. No blurbs. No forward from someone who hadn't cried reading it. Just a place to reply. She smiled. Then we'll need to open the archives. And just like that, we began. The weeks that followed felt like waking into a life I didn't know I could still choose. I stayed. We curated. We brought the shoebox letters out of the attic and created a community exhibit in the old oil room. We invited anyone, locals, tourists, students, lost wanderers, to leave a message in the ledger, and anyone else to respond. No email. No mailing list. Just words. Just witness. We called it the Exhibition of Tidal Letters. Free. Anonymous. Always open. We catalogued some, yes. Digitized a few. But most stayed in their original form, coffee-stained, wrinkled, tear-smudged. They felt alive that way. Like breath caught in paper. We didn't explain it much. We just let it be. People came. A widower who hadn't spoken in months left a note, "I dreamed her voice last night. I forgot how kind it was." A schoolgirl left a reply, "Then speak. Even if she can't answer. That kindness is still yours." An immigrant who missed home more than he admitted wrote, "Tell me it's okay not to belong." Someone responded in a careful hand, "You already do." And on one late morning, under a titapool shaped like a comma, we found a letter in a cobalt bottle that read, "You found me before I was ready. But I remember the rope. Thank you for throwing it anyway." No name. No address. But Isla held it in her hands like something sacred. I didn't need to ask. We didn't promise forever. We didn't wear rings or sign leases or announce anything at all. Instead, we kept our promises small and present. A pot of broth warming on the lighthouse stove. A note slipped into my notebook, storm coming. Anchor where you need to. A kiss on the back of my hand when she thought I was asleep. We were not rescuers. We were not reformed. We were here. And sometimes, that was enough. On the last day of summer, I stood alone at the edge of the tide. Not to say goodbye. Just to remember. I held the bottle I'd written in the night after the scandal broke. The one I never sent. The one that said nothing brave or quotable, just, I don't know what's left in me. I uncorked it. I let the tide take it. And for once, I didn't need it to come back. Behind me, Isla called, "We've got another." Another letter. Another voice. Another piece of someone who, for a moment, wanted to be known. I turned toward her, the lighthouse bright behind her like a second sun. And I thought, some messages cross oceans. The lucky ones find a shore, and ask you to stay.